When you have 4th of July and say, let's go over to Hank's house, he's going to touch off about 2 pounds of powder in a 1861 12-pound Napoleon cannon.
Albums on the country charts. Has that not been done before? Now, how? I see.
Williams Jr. is a name that looms large in country music, a genre shaped by his powerful vocals, rugged persona, and genre-defining songs. But for all his success, Hank Jr. has spent his life balancing his own journey against the monumental legacy of his father, Hank Williams Sr. Born on May 26, 1949, Hank Jr. grew up under the shadow of a country music legend, a father whose music shaped the very foundation of the genre. Known for timeless classics like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry and Your Cheatin' Heart, Hank Sr.'s reputation endures as one of the most revered figures in American music. For Hank Jr., however, that legacy was as much a source of conflict as it was of inspiration. From a young age, he felt the pressure to live up to his father's towering reputation, and for years, he wrestled with his own identity as a musician. Struggling to carve out his own path, he faced constant comparisons to Hank Sr., leaving him caught between honoring his father's legacy and forging his own voice in a fiercely competitive industry. As Hank Jr. navigated his music career, the weight of his father's influence grew into a public conflict, bringing to light his hidden struggles with identity and self-worth. Through moments of shocking candor and defiant independence, Hank Jr. revealed the complexities behind the relationship with his father's memory. This journey ultimately redefined his narrative, shaping him into a unique voice in country music. In this exploration of Hank Williams Jr.'s life, we'll delve into the struggles, secrets, and revelations that punctuate his path. Behind the public figure lies a story of resilience, conflict, and an unyielding determination to be seen not just as a legend's son, but as a legend in his own right. Born on May 26, 1949, in Shreveport, Louisiana, Hank Williams Jr. entered the world surrounded by the weight of an extraordinary legacy. As the son of Hank Williams Sr., a towering figure in country music, young Hank was raised with music in his blood, but with immense expectations looming over him. Hank Sr. was a trailblazer whose lyrics and voice captured the soul of America, influencing country music for generations. Tragically, however, Hank Jr. was only 3 years old when his father passed away in 1953. Though he had only a few short years with his dad, the legacy Hank Sr. left behind would follow him for a lifetime. Raised primarily by his mother, Audrey Williams, Hank Jr. was exposed to music from an early age. Audrey, who had been instrumental in managing Hank Sr.'s career, recognized her son's talent and encouraged him to perform his father's songs from an early age. By just 8 years old, Hank Jr. was already singing his father's hits on stage, wowing audiences with the uncanny similarity in their voices. Many fans, still mourning the loss of Hank Sr., began to see Hank Jr. as the next chapter in his father's legacy, a chance to keep the music alive. But for young Hank, stepping into the spotlight as his father's replacement was complicated. While fans adored him, the pressure was immense. As a child, he felt torn between two worlds, honoring his father's memory by carrying on his music and forging his own path as an artist. This dichotomy created tension that would only grow as he got older. It was clear from a young age that Hank Jr. possessed musical talent, but he didn't want to be seen only as Hank Sr.'s son. He wanted to be his own artist, even if he wasn't yet sure what that looked like. In his teenage years, Hank Jr.'s musical talent continued to develop, and he began exploring different genres beyond traditional country, including blues and rock. He formed his first band in high school, experimenting with sounds that diverged from his father's honky-tonk roots. Still, the pressure to honor his father's legacy remained ever present. His first album, Your Cheatin' Heart, released in 1964, featured covers of his father's most famous songs. While the album was a commercial success, Hank Jr. struggled with the project, feeling like he was still living in his father's shadow. By the time he reached his 20s, Hank Jr. felt an urgent need to establish himself independently. He began infusing Southern rock and blues influences into his music, pushing the boundaries of traditional country. Fans and critics were divided. While some applauded his innovation, others were resistant, viewing his divergence from his father's style as a betrayal of country music's roots. Hank Jr. felt that he couldn't win no matter what he did. He was criticized for being too much like his father, yet also faced backlash when he tried to be different. Despite these obstacles, Hank Jr. persevered, channeling his frustrations into his art. His desire for independence began to shape his career decisions, and he started making bold moves that would eventually define his identity. Behind his determination was a young man wrestling with the complex legacy left by his father, one that would both haunt and inspire him as he grew into the artist he wanted to become. In the chapters to come, we will delve further into Hank Jr.'s journey of self-discovery as he navigates the challenges of fame and finds his own voice amidst the legacy of a legend. As Hank Williams Jr. entered his teenage years, he increasingly felt the dual pressures of living up to his father's legacy while carving out his own identity. By the 1960s, Hank Jr. had embraced his family's musical roots, performing his father's songs in concert. In 1964, at only 14 years old, he released his first album, Cheatin Heart, honoring his father's legacy. While the project showcased his vocal talent, Hank Jr. felt constrained by the expectation to echo his father's sound and image. This period sparked his desire to develop a style all his own. Throughout the late 1960s, Hank Jr. began exploring genres outside of country, including rock and blues. Collaborating with rock bands and performing at unconventional venues, he felt a creative freedom that set him apart from the traditional country path his father had laid out. While many fans and industry figures criticized his shift, expecting him to continue his father's honky-tonk sound, Hank Jr. felt compelled to redefine himself. His influences grew to include southern rock bands like Leonard Skynyrd and the Allman Brothers Band, who welcomed his rebellious spirit and supported his musical evolution. Despite his enthusiasm, Hank Jr. faced ongoing resistance from fans and industry executives alike. Many questioned his divergence from country roots, seeing his experimentation as a rejection of his father's legacy. These struggles heightened Hank's determination to prove himself as a serious, innovative artist, independent of his father's image. Embracing a blend of country, rock, and blues, he began to defy the limitations that his family name imposed. A pivotal moment arrived in 1975 with the release of Hank Williams Jr. and Friends. The album, a distinct blend of rock, blues, and country, was a bold departure from his previous work. Featuring collaborations with Charlie Daniels and Toy Caldwell of the Marshall Tucker Band, the album resonated with younger fans and introduced Hank's signature outlaw country style. While traditionalists criticized him for moving away from his roots, his new sound captured the spirit of a generation looking for something raw and real. The success of Hank Williams Jr. and Friends marked a turning point. It demonstrated Hank's commitment to forging his own path, even in the face of criticism and family expectations. Finally, he felt a sense of artistic independence, yet this shift came at a personal cost. The drive to be seen as his own artist brought intense scrutiny, fueling both his passion and his inner conflict. This chapter of Hank's life laid the foundation for the next, where he would confront not only the challenges of his own career, but the deeper struggles of reconciling his identity with the looming legacy of his father's name. As Hank Williams Jr.'s fame grew, so did his struggle to balance his father's iconic legacy with his own individuality. The music industry, as well as fans, constantly measured him against Hank Williams Sr., an unrelenting comparison that Hank Jr. found both inspiring and limiting. Growing up in the shadow of a legendary figure had embedded feelings of inadequacy in him from a young age, and as his career progressed, this sense of conflict only intensified. Hank Jr. loved and respected his father's music, but he was desperate to be recognized as an artist in his own right. This struggle for identity manifested in Hank's growing experimentation with music. Determined to create a sound that reflected his own personality, he began blending genres, incorporating rock, blues, and southern rock influences into his work. While this new direction won him a devoted younger fan base, it also drew criticism from traditional country purists who felt he was straying too far from his father's honky-tonk roots. The weight of expectation to uphold his father's legacy clashed directly with Hank's desire to innovate, creating an inner conflict that became evident in both his music and public persona. As he experimented with new styles, Hank's personal life began to mirror the rebellion and independence he sought in his music. His immersion in the rock and roll lifestyle led him into a series of personal struggles, including battles with alcohol and drugs. The demands of fame and the pressure to embody a version of his father that wasn't truly his own only compounded these issues, leading to moments of isolation and frustration. Friends and collaborators noted that Hank often felt misunderstood, caught between honoring his father's legacy and fighting to establish his own. The result was a lifestyle filled with highs and lows that pushed him to the edge. By the late 1970s, Hank's struggle reached a breaking point. Desperately seeking a sense of belonging and validation, he became increasingly vocal about the burden of his father's legacy. In interviews, he expressed frustration with being perpetually seen as Hank Williams' son, rather than as Hank Williams Jr., the artist. He longed for an identity unbound from his father's shadow, yet feared that fully breaking away would alienate the fans who revered his father. This emotional turmoil culminated in one of the most pivotal moments of his life, a near-fatal fall off a Montana mountain in 1975. The accident left Hank Jr. with severe injuries, requiring multiple surgeries and extensive recovery time. During this period of physical and emotional rehabilitation, he experienced a profound shift in perspective. The brush with death allowed him to confront the reality of his life and the toll his inner struggles had taken. The experience became a catalyst for change, reinforcing his desire to live life and make music on his own terms. It was a moment of reckoning, where he began to fully embrace his independence and resolved to build his career in the image he envisioned for himself, not as a mere reflection of his father's legacy. Emerging from his recovery, Hank Jr. felt renewed determination. This experience would propel him into a new era, one in which he would fearlessly pursue his vision, regardless of public opinion. It was the beginning of Hank's transformation from Hank Sr.'s son to a pioneering artist in his own right, setting the stage for the next chapter of his career. As Hank Williams Jr. continued to battle the expectations of being Hank Williams Sr.'s son, his journey toward independence became more contentious. By the early 1980s, after years of attempting to balance his own artistic voice with his father's legacy, he began openly resisting the pressure to follow his father's musical path. He was tired of being viewed as a replica and knew it was time to make a bold stand if he was to truly claim his identity. This determination sparked a shocking public feud with the memory of his father, a confrontation that would challenge both his fans and the country music world. Hank Jr.'s frustration reached a boiling point during interviews and performances. He began making candid statements about his relationship with his father's legacy and the industry's insistence that he conform to a traditional country mold. "I'm my own man," he declared in one memorable interview, making it clear he was not just a shadow of Hank Sr. This unapologetic stance was a departure from his previous respect and reserve, and it sent shockwaves through his fan base and the media, who were accustomed to seeing Hank Jr. as his father's heir apparent. Suddenly, he was seen as a son rebelling against an untouchable legacy. In an effort to assert his independence, Hank Jr. made bold artistic choices, shifting his musical style even further from his father's honky-tonk roots. He released songs that reflected his own rebellious spirit, such as "All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight" and "Family Tradition," which voiced his frustrations with being compared to his father. The lyrics in these tracks were raw, addressing his inner turmoil and frustrations openly, and they struck a chord with listeners who sensed his authenticity. Fans responded powerfully, appreciating the honesty and grit in his work, but others criticized his departure from tradition, viewing it as a betrayal of his father's legacy. As the feud unfolded, Hank Jr. faced backlash from conservative country fans and industry insiders who felt he was distancing himself too far from his roots. He had turned the legacy he was born into upside down, and it led to both admiration and condemnation. Many felt he was being ungrateful or even disrespectful, while others saw him as an artist determined to pave his own way. This division caused tension within the country music community, pitting tradition against innovation. For Hank Jr., however, the feud was more personal than any public reaction could capture. It was a necessary struggle for freedom from a legacy that had confined him. Adding to the complexity, Hank Jr.'s concerts during this period became expressions of his conflict. He began altering the lyrics to his songs, sometimes openly referencing his father in ways that surprised audiences. The intensity and raw emotion of his live performances became legendary. Audiences could feel the weight of his struggle in his voice, as if he were airing decades of unresolved conflict on stage. This visceral energy attracted fans and gave Hank Jr. the reputation of a fiercely independent artist who wasn't afraid to confront his demons, no matter how sacred they might seem. The feud's climax arrived when Hank Jr. made the difficult decision to distance himself from his father's legacy altogether in public statements and interviews. He began referring to himself simply as Bacchus, a nickname given to him by his father, symbolizing his choice to establish his identity outside of Hank Sr.'s shadow. This change marked a critical turning point, a symbolic reclamation of his life as Hank Williams Jr., distinct and unapologetically himself. Though the feud brought criticism, it also brought Hank Jr. new fans who admired his courage and his dedication to authenticity. He had risked it all to emerge as an artist defined by his own choices rather than those made for him by fate. Ultimately, the feud served as the breaking point that allowed Hank Jr. to fully step into his own, embracing his individualism and leading to the creation of music that became emblematic of a new country style, one that blended Southern rock with outlaw country. As we explore the aftermath of this defining conflict, we'll examine how Hank Jr. reconciled his past and continued to evolve as an artist. What did the legacy of Hank Williams Sr. come to mean for Hank Jr. in the years that followed? And how would his choice to rebel reshape his career and, ultimately, the very nature of country music? The answers lie in the transformation that this feud sparked, forever altering the course of Hank Williams Jr.'s life. While Hank Williams Jr.'s public clash with his father's legacy shocked fans, deeper, hidden struggles with addiction, identity, and loss profoundly shaped his journey. Behind his bold persona, Hank grappled with intense private battles that colored every aspect of his life and career. Hank Jr.'s struggle with addiction began early on as he tried to cope with the pressure of living up to Hank Sr.'s legendary reputation. He turned to alcohol and drugs, finding temporary relief from the burdens of fame and comparison. The pressures of the spotlight only amplified these struggles, and his access to substances became part of his coping mechanism. Despite his outward success, he often felt isolated, weighed down by the reality that he would always be judged against a father he barely knew. His closest friends saw his reliance on alcohol behind the scenes, especially before performances when the pressure to deliver would heighten. He'd often sneak drinks just to calm his nerves, maintaining a fearless image on stage while privately fighting battles few understood. Those close to him wanted to help, but often felt helpless, unsure how to penetrate the walls he'd built to protect himself. Hank's sense of abandonment and unresolved grief over his father's death added to his hidden burdens. Hank Sr. passed when Hank Jr. was only 3, leaving a void that haunted him for years. Growing up without his father compounded the pressure to carry on a legacy he barely remembered. Although fame granted him access to his father's fans, it also fostered resentment. He struggled with feeling unworthy of his father's legacy while never able to escape it, fueling self-doubt and depression. In 1975, a near-fatal fall from a Montana mountain marked a turning point. Falling nearly 500 feet left him with severe injuries and a shaken sense of self. Multiple reconstructive surgeries physically altered him, but he emerged with a new outlook. This near-death experience forced him to confront his life choices and the addiction that had complicated his journey. It was a critical moment, leading him to realize that he would have to face his past if he wanted to survive and thrive. Following this painful period, Hank Jr. began using his music to express his struggles openly. Songs like Whiskey Bent and Hellbound and A Country Boy Can Survive revealed themes of hardship, resilience, and self-acceptance that resonated deeply with fans. His vulnerability marked a pivotal moment in his career, strengthening his connection with audiences and helping him move beyond his father's shadow. By confronting his hidden struggles, Hank Jr. began to transform both his life and career. His candidness resonated with fans, many of whom saw him as a relatable figure who had not only survived his father's legacy, but had also found his own powerful voice. As Hank Williams Jr. navigated through the highs and lows of his career, he ultimately reached a point of resolution, accepting the complexities of his father's legacy while forging his own path. The journey to this place of balance was challenging, marked by intense public scrutiny, personal turmoil, and an internal struggle that few could understand. Yet, these experiences ultimately shaped him, allowing him to embrace his identity fully. In the aftermath of his battles with addiction and recovery from his near-fatal accident, Hank Jr. sought to redefine himself as an artist, moving away from comparisons to his father and toward an identity that was uniquely his. This journey was marked by a bold shift in his musical style. Embracing Southern rock, blues, and his own distinctive brand of country, he created a sound that was unapologetically Hank Jr. His music took on themes of resilience, pride, and independence, qualities that resonated with fans who admired his refusal to be boxed in by expectations. The song, "A Country Boy Can Survive," became a defining anthem, celebrating self-reliance and the spirit of the working-class American, a sentiment that struck a chord nationwide. In this way, Hank Jr. channeled his personal experiences and struggles into a powerful message that not only set him apart, but also helped him find peace with his father's legacy. His music became a means of connection rather than comparison, allowing him to honor his roots while expressing his own voice. This period of self-acceptance also influenced his public image. Hank Jr. began to open up more about his personal challenges, including his battle with addiction and the pressure of his family name. His honesty endeared him to fans who appreciated his willingness to share his story. They saw in him a figure of resilience, someone who had faced immense pressure and personal struggles, but had come through with a stronger sense of self. In later years, Hank Jr. found a way to celebrate his father's influence without being overshadowed by it. He even performed duets with his father's recordings, bridging past and present, and acknowledging the musical legacy he was a part of without letting it define him. This blending of old and new became a powerful symbol of Hank Jr.'s journey, illustrating his ability to honor his heritage while standing firmly in his own legacy. Today, Hank Williams Jr. is recognized as a country music icon, not just because of his father's legacy, but because of the road he paved on his own. His story serves as an example of resilience, self-discovery, and the importance of creating one's path even amidst overwhelming expectations. Hank Williams Jr.'s life is a testament to the complexities of family legacy, self-discovery, and resilience. Growing up under the towering shadow of Hank Williams Sr., he faced enormous pressure from fans, the music industry, and himself to live up to his father's iconic status. However, Hank Jr. soon recognized that he could not simply follow in his father's footsteps. He needed to forge his own path and build a career defined by his unique voice and experiences. Through the ups and downs of his career and personal life, Hank Jr. grappled with addiction, near-fatal accidents, and public scrutiny, each event shaping his character and music in profound ways. His eventual embrace of Southern rock and the bold, defiant themes of his work marked his transition from a young artist in his father's shadow to a fully realized icon in his own right. Songs like "A Country Boy Can Survive" became symbols of his resilience, embodying his spirit and independence in a way that resonated deeply with audiences. Hank Jr.'s willingness to confront his past, speak openly about his struggles, and even pay tribute to his father's influence while maintaining his own identity has left a lasting mark on country music. He stands as an icon who not only honored his heritage, but also expanded the genre through his innovations, inspiring countless artists who followed. In reflecting on Hank Williams Jr.'s journey, we see a story of both hardship and triumph. His legacy serves as a reminder that while we may be shaped by our roots, our paths are ultimately ours to forge. For Hank Jr., embracing both his heritage and his individuality became his true victory, showing that resilience, authenticity, and a fierce sense of self can turn any challenge into a powerful legacy.